X Windows. In this nugget, we're going to look at the X Windows windowing system. We'll talk about some of the terminology associated with X Windows, and then we'll look at the configuration file and the various parts of that. And then at the end, we're going to have a little bit of fun and look at X Windows in its most bare bones form. All right, well, let's get to work. Let's start our discussion of X Windows by talking about X clients and X servers. Okay, now this notion of client and server is actually a little bit backwards from the way that we normally think about it. Normally we think about a server being located somewhere remotely over the network, and we get some service off of it. And then the client is our local machine. Alright? Well, for X Windows, this is a little bit backwards, okay? Here's our local machine here. Well, the X server is what runs on our local machine, alright? The X server is responsible for drawing graphical output to your monitor. Okay? Then X clients can run on any machine out there. They could be running on these machines over here remotely over the network, or they could be running on your local machine. No matter where the X client is running, it gives graphical display information to your X server, and your X server draws it to your monitor. Okay? So that's the way you have to think about clients and servers with regards to X Windows. Now, Red Hat uses an X server program called X386, which is a very common X server program that's out there. Now, in terms of clients, there's just a zillion clients out there. It's zillion X clients. All a client is an application program, and like we said, it uses your X server for output. Now, what are the application programs that are out there? What are the X client programs that are out there? All sorts of stuff. Clocks, calculators, spreadsheet programs, mathematical drawing programs. All sorts of stuff is out there in terms of application programs, whatever you need practically. Okay? These X clients have a common set of command line options to control how they're displayed. Okay, so the first one is -display option. Okay, now this option tells what server that you want to display the output to. Okay, so you the monitor on my desk, I think I got it on sale for like 99 bucks, okay? So if I fried it, I'm out 99 bucks. If I was on a laptop and I fried out my monitor, there's no way I'm going to get out of it with just $99, okay? That's going to be a very expensive. I'm going to end up just replacing my laptop if it's kind of old and the monitor parts aren't available anymore and so on, okay? So this is something you have to be very careful of, is if you're manually adjusting refresh rates, all right? Now this XF86 config file has a bunch of sections to it. Okay, so let's talk about the various sections of this file, and then we'll move out to the Linux screen and look at some of this stuff firsthand. Okay, so the first element of the XF86 config file is called the server layout, and this is like the top level description of the X server. Okay, and basically it's just going to specify which of the other things that you're defining down here are being used, and we'll see that in a second. Okay, so the file section, that talks about the location of fonts, colors, and so on. The modules section talks about which modules to load for your X server. So there's all these various options that you can have for your X server, and you can just pick which of those you're going to need, and you load those as appropriate. Okay, input devices defines keyboards, mice, and things like that, like how many keys your keyboards have, how many buttons are on your mouse, that sort of stuff. Monitor defines the monitor's capabilities, like we were talking about, refresh rates, resolution capabilities, that sort of stuff. Device is for graphics card information, so the brand name or the chipset on your graphics card. And then the screen defines things like resolution and color depth. Okay, so between all these options, you're really defining the X server in whole, and you can define, under any one of these things, you can define multiple input devices or multiple monitors or multiple devices, and then under server layout you can pick and choose which one you're using at any given time. Okay, and if you're moving around from computer to computer, then that's where this makes sense, right? So that if you're moving from computer to computer with different hardware, different graphics cards, things like that, you can have one XF86 config file that controls. Also, if you make changes to a file, an XF86 config file that other people use, that other people log onto this computer and use, you should comment your changes in the comments so that people know why things were different, why things were changed. If something's not working for them, they can go through this file, look for recent comments, and then they can come to you and say, hey, you changed this and that's messed up something the way that I did it, and then you can work that out. Okay, so it's always good to document your changes in the comments of these configuration files. Okay, so here is our keyboard setup here in the input device section. So you can see the identifier is keyboard 0. That's what we referred to back up in the server layout section. And then it says, okay, what's the driver I use, the keyboard driver, and what are the various options that I want for my keyboard. You can see here it's a 105 key keyboard, it's a US style keyboard, that sort of thing. Okay, same goes for the mouse down here. The identifier here is mouse 0, the driver's mouse. What's the options? It's a PS2 mouse. I want to emulate 3 buttons because I only have a 2-button mouse, that sort of thing. Okay, that's how you set this up, and then these identifiers are the ones that get used up in server layout. Okay, so I don't want to go through all of this. We kind of have the idea now how it works. You know, there's the monitor section, the device section, the screen section. So the screen section is kind of like another of the higher level things, and then up in server layout we chose screen 0. In screen 0 we said we want to use video card 0, monitor 0 that were just defined above. We want to have a default color depth of 16-bit color, and then we want to have 800 by 600 resolution, which seems kind of low, but that's what I need for recording the videos here. Okay, so that's the simple tour of the XF86 config file for you. Alright, now comes time for some fun stuff. Okay, now maybe you're not going to think this is as fun as I think it is, but at least it's instructive. So we're going to start up some X clients, and then they're going to pop up on this screen when we come back here again. So let's go back to the console again. Again, Control-Alt-F1, we'll go back to the console, and we'll be right where we left off. Alright, so here we are back at the console. I'm just going to hit enter here to get a command prompt back up. It printed some messages to the screen while we were gone. We don't really have to look at those. But now what I want to do is I want to type, I want to start up a display here. So in that window, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type xterm -display, and what I can do is I can just type localhost :0.0. Okay, so this is going to start up an X terminal. There's our X client option. Remember, we were talking about the options that we can give to X client. One of those options is -display, and localhost is the place that we want the display to be. So it's going to display on this machine that I'm on right now. Okay, I'm going to put an ampersand after that again. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter. All right, now I do that. Background processes has started. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to switch back out to that X window display, the one that was the ugly black screen with the X on it, and we do that by hitting Alt F7. So I do Alt F7, I'm going to go back out to that display, and I'll see you there. Alright, well here we are. We've got our X terminal window now in our X session, okay? And it doesn't look anything like what we saw before when we had the desktop environment and the window manager working for us too. This is only X Windows that's working right now. Okay, so what can we do in this terminal window? Well, we could do anything we could do in a terminal window before. We can type ls, we can cd up to the etc directory and do an ls and pipe it through more and so on, and look at that. I can hit Control-C. Okay, all the stuff I could do in a terminal before, I can do in this terminal now. What I can't do is deal with this window, right? I can't move this window around. I don't have a title bar up here to click on and drag. I don't have a minimize or a maximize or a close button up here. The only graphical thing I have available to me is this scroll bar over here, right? That's the only thing that I have available to me, okay, in terms of graphics. I can type any of the commands I could before, I just don't have all the graphical capabilities. All right. Now there's other X clients that we can start from this terminal window. All right, let's look at some of those. They're in user x11r6 bin, and let's list the ones that start with X. So I'll say lsx star, and star stands for anything. So anything that starts with X we'll list, and here's a big list of things that start with X. These are all X clients that we can start from the command line and have them show up here on the screen. Okay, so let's type xclock first. Okay, so I'll type xclock -display localhost :0.0. Okay, so I'll do that, I'll hit enter, and boom, there's my xclock. Alright, well where did it show up? Its default for showing up was in the upper right hand corner. All right, well that stinks because now I can't even read my whole screen anymore. I can't move this window because I don't have any of these title bars. Okay, so I'm just going to hit Control-C and get it out of the way there. All right, now I can start it. I'll do the same thing I did before, use the history, the up arrow there to get back that same command. But now I'm going to add on the geometry qualifier. So remember the other options that we could use when we start up X clients. There's display and geometry are probably the two most common ones. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it 50 pixels by 50 pixels big. Okay, and I wanted to situate it down here in the lower right hand corner. And remember when I told you about the offsets as part of the options for geometry, you would say something like plus 100 plus 200, and that would move it in 100 pixels from the right and 200 pixels from the top. Well, you can also work from all the other corners too. Okay, if I put in a minus 0 here instead of plus 0 plus 0, well, minus 0 relates to the lower right hand corner. Okay, so this says 0 pixels from the right and 0 pixels from the bottom. Okay, so let me just hit enter here. I'm going to put an ampersand so it runs in the background. And now we've got our X clock again running. It sits down here in the lower right hand corner. It's 50 pixels square. Okay, but I still can't move it or do anything. That's all window manager stuff. Right? Another one that's pretty fun in here is XEyes. Okay, so I'm going to type XEyes, same thing again. Okay, minus display, localhost, localhost colon 0.0, minus geometry. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. And now I want this one, let's put this one up in the upper right hand corner. So how would we do that? Well, we would do 0 pixels from the right, that was minus 0, and 0 pixels from the top, that's plus 0. Okay, so the first coordinate is always the X offset, the second coordinate is always the Y offset. Okay, and again I'll hit ampersand to put it up there, and there's the XEyes. Notice they'll just follow my cursor around. You can go right in between and make them cross-eyed. Okay, somebody had a lot of time on their hands, right? Okay, so if you're paranoid and you don't like people watching you, maybe you just want to kill this process. I just kind of like doing this and making the eyes all jiggy. Okay, so this is X Windows at its primitive. I think this is really neat because now when we go to talk about desktop environments and window managers in the next video, then you'll see sort of, okay, well that's what the desktop environment and the window manager provides on top of X Windows. This is all X Windows provides. We can run all sorts of applications. We have real functionality. We're just losing all that nice stuff that the graphical user interface provided that we're used to. That, you know, a lot of people just think that's X Windows, but it's not. And that's what this little lesson here shows you. Okay, so so that's it. So now let's wrap up and kind of wrap up what we did in this video. Alright, well it's time to wrap up our nugget on X Windows. We first started by talking about the differences between the X server and the X client and got some terminology straight there. Remember, the X server runs on your local machine and it's responsible for displaying the graphics to the machine. We talked about the XF86 config file, looked at the info page for that, and also scanned through the one that was created by our installation program. Remember the configuration programs, Red Hat config, XFree86, and XF86 config. This one's graphical based, this one's text based. We actually looked at this one in the introductory videos. I didn't even go through these in this video just because they're so self-explanatory. They just follow exactly the same steps that we went through in the installation program in the introductory videos. You fill in a monitor type, a screen resolution, and video card, and that sort of stuff. This is very self-explanatory. Then the hotkeys that I mentioned while we were doing that little exercise at the end, remember Control-Alt-F1 takes you from an X session or from a graphical session to the text-based console or the text-based login screen. And then Alt-F7 takes you from the text-based screen back to the X Windows session if you've already started one of those. Okay, so that wraps up this nugget on X Windows. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it informative.